Let's go to that Ace Law listener line and start off with Dontel and Frederick. Dontel, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, thanks so much for taking my call, guys, and Happy New Year to you.
Thank you, and Happy New Year to you, too.
Dude, I'm thinking if we don't get Khalid Williams or Jaden Daniels here, it's just going to be another total catastrophe. It is so hard to get a high-profile quarterback. I mean, we haven't gotten one in over a decade with RG3, and we were somewhat good then. I mean, until he made some certain situation. My opinion, he made his own bed, so I think that's how his career ended up, with him making some bad choices. But Khalid Williams and Jaden Daniels is what we're going to need, because my man, Sam Howell is not good. I mean, he's okay, but he's not good. Yeah. And, I mean, I think if you put Sam Howell on the 49ers, it wouldn't be that much of a fall-off, because I don't feel that Brock Purdy's that good. I mean, we don't have a Brandon Ayuk. We don't have Deebo Samuels. We don't have Kittle, Christian McCaffrey. We need to build this thing. So, and I think it starts with the high-profile quarterback.
All right, so I'm going to – you just made two contrary points, which I think is interesting. Thanks for the call. Much appreciated. But, like, this is the conundrum that I am in and will unravel over the next 4 months, because I have not started my college stuff. I watched, obviously, some of the college football playoff the other night. You know, I'm tangentially aware of what some of the draft analysts that do this stuff for a living think of certain quarterbacks. But at the end of the day, like, I haven't sat down and started to watch these guys yet. I'll probably start doing that in the next couple of weeks. But a lot of my, I tend to rely more on scouting than evaluation, if you will. You know, when I go to the combine, for instance, if I go again this year, you know, you start talking to people and you get some of the background of, like, the kid's makeup and a lot of that kind of stuff. And, you know, I think because of the nature of Washington's pick this year, like, spending some time watching the quarterbacks is going to be worth it. But I also don't pretend to be a professional scout. So there's that as well. But on a larger point, like, you say two things there. You talk about San Francisco and Brock Purdy and how you don't think he's that good. One, I think Brock Purdy may have not started out that good last year, but Brock Purdy does a lot to elevate that offense. They don't ask him to do it very often, but when he is called upon, he is ready. And that is because they have created a system schematically and an ecosystem in terms of players around him that allows a quarterback of Brock Purdy's caliber and Brock Purdy's specific skill set to succeed. That dude is super duper smart, and he's really accurate, and he's a great decision maker. And so, yeah, I think they can win a Super Bowl pretty easily. Not pretty easily, but, like, they can win a Super Bowl with Brock Purdy. Brock Purdy's not going to hold them back. He can make the plays that are necessary to win. And that's something that probably a year ago wasn't true. Like, he's been allowed to incubate, to use a term that I've used a lot in the last month or so with Sam, where I think the Commanders failed Sam this season. I don't think Sam is as good at some of the very specific things that Brock Purdy is good at, and I do think there would be a drop-off if he was in San Francisco. But I also think Kyle, if Sam was his quarterback, would have built it differently. So there's that too. The point I think that's most important here, though, is you can't be like, what we need is all these other players, which is why we need to take the great quarterback. You pretty much only get one. You got to pick a path. Are we going to be elite at everything else? Are we going to build a great defense with great skill positions and very essentially a great offensive line? Or are you going to have a great quarterback that covers up for deficiencies elsewhere? Are you going to draft Joe Burrow and your offensive line, being one of the worst in the league, gets covered up because Joe Burrow's that damn good? Are you going to have an average-ish offensive line in places and, you know, skill position players that are not as good anywhere else in Kansas City, and a defense that for part of this run was more middle of the pack than what it is now? And have Patrick Mahomes? Are you going to have, you know, Brady cover up for mediocre, a lot of stuff in New England over time, like very good defense, and then, you know, Brady made the offense work? Like, you got to have a plan, a vision. By the way, I heard this the other day, which is nuts. You want to know how good Tom Brady is at covering up for stuff? The New England Patriots have not re-signed to a second contract a draft pick that Bill Belichick has selected since 2013. They literally have gone an entire decade without re-signing a draft pick to a second contract in the first 3 rounds. They won multiple Super Bowls in that realm because Tom Brady's that good and Bill Belichick as a defensive coach is that good. So you can have a quarterback that covers it up, and if you get Caleb Williams, by the way, Caleb Williams, or if Jaden Daniels is that guy, or if Drake May is that guy, or if Michael Penix or J.J. McCarthy or Bo Nix is that guy, great. That's the shortcut. The fastest path to do it is to get that right. It's also extremely difficult. And in some ways, it's easier, even though it's the long way around, to take Olu Fashanu, the tackle out of Penn State, a stud edge rusher with the 35th pick, the second pick in the second round, and then another stud, whatever, maybe a Keon Coleman out of Florida State, big wide receiver, ex-wide receiver with your 40 whatever pick that you get from the Bears. Or you trade down and you try to target a tackle and Brock Bowers, the tight end out of Georgia. And you just build it up with studs all over the place and get by with a Sam Howell caliber, or even, you try to trade back and get a late first and a late top 10 pick if that's feasible. And you get Penix or Nix at the end of the first round or the start of the second. And, your whatever's in the first round. And you draft a guy that has a longer window, a longer runway than Sam Howell contractually, and build up the roster around him. I think that's a feasible play as well. But with Howell, you run into a couple of issues, mainly that if you're going to take 2-3 years to build up the roster because you need a couple years worth of studs, even if Sam is good the next couple of years and he winds up just being a bridge guy, you got to pay him in 2 years. This is the downside of a fifth-round quarterback, is the contract is 4 years, not 5, compared to a first-rounder. And when he sits for a year, and then the first year is this mixed bag of whatever, and your third year is a bridge year, all of a sudden you're staring down paying the guy if all of a sudden he flourishes in year 4, and we call that a Daniel Jones special, even though Jones did it in the 5th year instead of the 4th. But he flourishes in the final year, and you're like, do we pay him? Or do we move on? This is the conundrum you find yourself in. So it's not straightforward. It's not easy. And I think that actually highlights, unintentionally, that caller just highlighted the very, promising, because there are multiple paths you could go down, and depending on what you think of these quarterbacks, if Jaden Daniels is your guy, then sick. Take him. Go for it. I by no means am going to push back on that. But you just better think he's your guy. Because you're not, hopefully, then going to get a chance to draft that much higher, that much longer. Because you're going to be, good and win football games. Let's go back to that Ace Law listener line and keep it going on our Vibe Check Wednesday with JT. JT, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
Hey, what's going on, fellas? And Happy New Year.
Happy New Year to you as well.
The call.
Yeah, you got it.
Hey, I appreciate that. And as far as the vibe, my vibe, and I hate that my vibe is excited, but it's to be transparent. That's exactly where it's at. And that we have sucked so bad that we're in a good position and we're in a position to change. Where there's excitement around, who will be able to select as a GM, who will be able to get as a coach. And then ultimately, because I feel those are the most important decisions that have to be made this winter. And then what's going to happen in free agency, and then ultimately, who we're going to draft. And one of the questions that I did have, because I know obviously everyone saw Penix play the other night, and I know he's coming off 2 ACLs. What's your thoughts on him? Because obviously I think everybody wants Caleb. I'm not sure what the Bears are going to do. It looks as if they'll take Marvin or trade out of the picks. So I don't know. I'm not sure, what if Caleb will even be available. I haven't been overly impressed with Drake May from the stuff that I've seen. I'm Caleb would be my one, and then Jaden Daniels, and then I would go with Penix. But what's your thoughts on Penix? And like I said, the vibe is I'm excited for all the change.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the call. Thank you. And I'm honestly excited too. I have been saying for months on this show and on Take Command, we're just going to have to survive the next couple of weeks, but this is an exciting time. Like there's going to be the changes that have long been needed to happen. And unlike in previous years where you hope to get someone and hope it works out and you kind of have to take flyers, like I think the Commanders could be the top job on the market depending on what you like. Like if you want an established quarterback, you're going to go to Los Angeles and you're going to take Justin Herbert and you're going to be very happy with that decision. But if you want flexibility, if you want the ability to build something, and you want to be incredibly well-resourced with who we think is a great owner in Josh Harris, based off what he's given his other organizations to work with, the Devils have rebuilt very well. The Sixers are competitive year in and year out, even if they haven't won the big one yet. I realize that. But again, 50 wins for 6 straight years is one of the best runs in the last decade of the NBA. And he has given his teams the resources to compete year in and year out. They just haven't always come through. And that's all you can ask for out of your ownership is, do you have the resources to compete? And I do think because of that, the Commanders are going to be a top destination for GMs and for coaches and for players for the first time in a long time. As specifically for Penix, again, I haven't watched a ton of these guys. The ACL stuff doesn't necessarily concern me a ton. I'd certainly have my questions about his rehab and stuff and kind of where he's at now. I want my strength and conditioning staff to be able to look at some of the metrics and the numbers around that. My doctors to understand the surgeries and how he recovered and all of that kind of stuff. The question I really have for Penix is, and it's one that we actually talked about on yesterday's edition of Take 5, the quick off-day edition, if you will, of Take Command, where we don't do a full 45-minute podcast, but we just do like a 5-10-minute conversation, is his age. Like he is in his 6th year doing this. He is 23 years old. And it's not so much that he's old and like, oh my God, like he's going to retire before we ever get the money's worth out of him. Because quarterbacks that are good play into their mid-30s at this point, if not late 30s. But it's, were you a guy that was dominant when you were younger, or you just get really good at college football because you're 23 years old now, beating up on 19-year-olds? He's a guy that's had multiple consistent years, and he's shown a good growth trajectory. And from what I understand about him as a QB, like I'm somewhat interested in him. He has a quick release. Obviously, he's very accurate. He's not afraid to throw the ball down the field. We saw that in the semifinal the other night. I think there's a lot to like there. He's not like a super mobile guy like a Jaden Daniels, obviously. Caleb seems to be the guy that everyone agrees upon is special. The opinions on May are all over the place. Nix is, I think, another interesting guy. And the one guy that I kind of hope he goes back to school is J.J. McCarthy. He just seems he's super young. He doesn't seem like he's built for the NFL yet. But he might be a top 10 pick. So he might, and if Harbaugh leaves, especially, like, why would you go back to Michigan at that point? Just come out and to be the high draft pick and hope you go to a place that is willing to have some patience with you. So I think the question you have to ask is, like, if you were staring at a quarterback who's a gigantic flyer, and let's say Daniels is that guy, or May, like either one. You don't get Caleb Williams, the guy that you're sure about, because New England, Robert Kraft is hell-bent on starting the new administration in New England post-Bill Belichick with a number one guy who his new coach is in love with. And he trades an RG3 style, whatever, with the Bears to trade up to number one. And Washington's like, we're not paying that. That's ridiculous. Good, prudent decision. Right? Let's say that happens. If that happens and you're staring at Marvin Harrison, who's the best receiver prospect in a decade, Fashanu, very, very good left tackle prospect, or 2 quarterbacks you take a flyer on, do you take the surer thing, the receiver or the tackle, and then try to trade back into the back end of the first round for a guy like Penix? And I think if you ultimately tier out these QBs and you don't think there's a lot of separation between May, Daniels, Penix, Nix, McCarthy, then that would be my plan. I would try to package those 2 early seconds for a late first. If I have to give up a future second to do it, then fine. But that's how I would approach it and make sure that I get someone, but it doesn't have to be at the 2nd, 3rd, 4th pick, whatever they wind up with. If you don't think there's that much difference and you think that there is a huge difference in the quality of the other player that you can get. Back to the calls we go on that Ace Law listener line. Let's go to Randy. Randy, thanks for calling. You are on the Hoffman Show.
How you doing? Appreciate the time.
Of course.
I just have to say that I have to disagree with you and the last caller. I'm not taking a quarterback unless his name is Bo Nix, and he's in the second or third round. I don't believe in Khalid, and I don't believe in the other guy.
Can I take a time out? Why are people all of a sudden calling him Khalid Williams? Anthony, did I miss a memo? It's Caleb Williams.
No. Caleb, that's my fault.
Okay,
No
you're the second
it.
person that did it, and I just wanted to make sure, because sometimes guys are like, hey, now that I'm going to be a professional, my name is said this way. So I'm just making sure I didn't miss something. I wasn't trying to be rude, I promise.
No, you didn't miss nothing.
Okay.
We are human. We pronounce
no, all right. All good. Continue.
We make mistakes. I wouldn't take a quarterback there. If someone wants to grab a quarterback up top, I would trade back. See, the problem is Sam was forced to pass about 80% of the time. He didn't have no run game, and he only had 16 starts. He's basically like a rookie. And what bothers me is that in the beginning of the season, Sam, he has potential. He's good, and he falls off later on in the season. Now he sucks. That's funny. The problem with this town, is they don't have any patience with their quarterbacks. That's why we suck. A fair evaluation would be to get the guy another year. And people overlook the fact that our defense sucked all year. They was giving up bombs after bombs. The defense was the problem, and Coach Rivera was the problem. To get a fair evaluation, Sam needs another year, need to build the O-line up, get as many picks as we can, and build our team. And that's my feel on it.
All right. Thanks for the call, Randy. Here's the problem with Randy's point. Sam is what the people who ultimately let him fall to the 5th round thought he was. Maybe he's a little bit better than that. Maybe he should have been a 3rd rounder, let's say. But the difference between other guys who get chances and Sam Howell, who, by the way, has not had 16 starts. He's got 17 going on 18, and he's not a rookie. He is a second-year player, which from like an experience and like if he was growing standpoint, I've been someone who said like he's basically a rookie. But now that it's getting down to decision time on how you plan your future, I cannot state this more clearly than this. Time starts working against Sam Howell now because he's not a rookie. He will be in his 3rd year. He is on a 4-year rookie deal. The whole appeal of Sam Howell is not that he's going to be the best quarterback in the league. The appeal of Sam Howell was and remains he could be pretty good, which is possible. I would say probably not likely that he's gives you a great shot to win every single week, can cut the turnovers, cut the sacks, be more deliberate with the football, be on time, all the stuff that people were concerned that he couldn't do, and then he proved them right. That you get through all of that, and then at the end of next year, you're like, yeah, we got our guy. Well, then guess what? You're in the final year of his rookie deal. And then you got to pay him. So if Sam was worth the flyer, because if he turned out to be great now, and like next year, you're like, hey, if we can surround this guy with some stuff, we're in the Super Bowl next year, versus like, hey, we need another year to find out. The contract is no longer playing in his favor. And people just seem to want to ignore that. And you can't. You just can't. That's not how the time-space continuum works.
This is the Hoffman Show on the Team 980 and the Odyssey app.